Well, this is my book talk. I did Slow Death by James Fielder. So this is how the book starts off. This is a quote directly from it. Cindy Vigil, 22, ran down the narrow hall and out the door of the mobile home. Fleeing for her life, it was late in the afternoon on March 22nd, 1999, and she had no idea where she was. She didn't know why she was running down Bass Road in Elephant Butte, New Mexico. She just knew she had to get away from the two people who'd kept her in captivity for the last 3 horrible days and nights. She was naked from head to toe, except for the padlock metal collar around her neck attached to a 4-foot swinging chain dangling in the wind over her shoulder. So the book is about David Parker Ray. He was born on November 6, 1939 in Belen, New Mexico. He was raised by his grandparents. He was raised by his grandparents because his father was a pretty bad alcoholic, and as such, he abandoned their family when he was really young, so he went to go live with his grandparents. But it was weird, so even though his father abandoned him, he would still periodically visit David, and during these visits, he would abuse David. Obviously, he would do a lot of terrible things, but something that I think molded David a lot was during these visitations, he would show David these pornographic magazines of rape pornographic magazines and things like that, and that I think started to shape the person that he would later become. So that was kind of his home life with his dad. It was a really weird situation. At school, he was bullied. He did pretty bad in school. He had terrible grades. But yeah, he was, for the most part, a loner. And yeah, during this time, while he was at school, he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. He became pretty heavily addicted to alcohol, actually. After high school, he joined the military as a mechanic. He was honorably discharged, and soon after, he worked as a mechanic in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He married 4 different women, one of which he had a daughter with, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so essentially what Ray would do is he bought a trailer and he put it near the Albuquerque desert, so it was pretty secluded. He spent about $100,000 modifying this trailer. He called this trailer a toy box, but it was essentially a torture chamber, so you can see in the picture, I can actually zoom in here. So there's a gynecology table in the middle of it. So what he would do is he would often drug women, mainly prostitutes, people that he thought wouldn't be missed by society, or people that he thought wouldn't be looked for. He would drug them and he would bring them to this trailer. And while they were drugged, he would strap them down into a gynecology table. So he would restrain them so they couldn't move. And he would play this tape for them. Now, he would play this tape, and essentially the tape detailed exactly what he was going to do to them in really graphic detail. So over here you can see he has a lot of diagrams. He has a lot of torture devices. He had a lot of sex toys that he would molest these women with, obviously against their will. And he would hold them captive for these binges. A lot of the time it lasted 3 days. He would hold these women in captivity, and he would just do whatever to them. It's speculated that he did kill a significant portion of them, although it has never 100% been proven. So that was essentially what he would do. He would just lure women in, drug them, and do whatever he wanted to them in this trailer. Okay, so we had 3 main accomplices. The first one is Jessie Ray. So Jessie Ray was his daughter. Jessie Ray was actually the first to alert authorities about David's crimes. So one day when she was about 19, I think this will also come up later. She was 19 and she walked in on her father during one of these torture sessions where he would kidnap women. And she called the FBI and told them about everything that was happening. And then the FBI called David in for an interview. And he straight up just admitted to everything. He literally did not deny any of the allegations, but they didn't have any evidence, so they set him free. That'll come up back later, but yeah, so after that, after no action was taken from the authorities, she kind of almost accepted who David was and his crimes and who he was as a person, and she got really, really suspiciously close to him that She had a daughter, and it's speculated. It's never been confirmed, but it's speculated that the daughter was David's, her own father's. So what she would do for David is she would frequently lure women into David's trailer under false pretenses. She would befriend the women a lot of the time. She would know so that she could know them personally, and she would lure them. She would drug him. She would give him a false sense of security, and then she would drug him. She would kidnap him and bring him to David's torture chamber, his torture trailer. His other accomplice was Cindy Hendy. Cindy was David's long-term girlfriend. They both shared similar sexual and tortures fantasies. She would also lure and drug and kidnap women for David. Once they did that, she would bring him to David's trailer, and she would actually participate with David in the rape and torture of the woman. She also claims that David murdered up to 14 women during his spree, but it's speculated that it was much more than just that. The third accomplice is David Roy Yancey. So essentially, Roy was friends with Jessie, David's daughter. They got pretty close as friends. Especially that they killed a man named Kenneth Lee together in a burglary over drugs in 1996. In 1997, though, he lured his ex-girlfriend. So Roy lured his ex-girlfriend, Marie Parker, into David's trailer. And then after 3 days, after David was done with her, he commanded Roy to kill her, to kill his ex-girlfriend. And yeah, he did. He strangled her to death with a rope, which he would later be convicted of. So these are his confirmed victims. He had a lot more. Talk about that later. But yeah, these are the three confirmed that David would later be charged with. The first one was Cynthia. So she was okay. So what happened was Cynthia had fallen on some pretty hard times. So she was working as a prostitute to make ends meet. And one day, she was in the parking lot of a nightclub, and David walks up to her. And he's posing as a police officer, and he claims to pretends to arrest her, but obviously she's kidnapped and taken to the toy box. He tortured and raped her for over the course of 3 days, but on the third day, David had to go to work, and Cynthia heard the tapes that he had played for her when she was first kidnapped, telling pretty much in the tapes he pretty much told the women that he would kill them. So when David left for work, Cynthia pretty much saw her chance. This was her only chance to escape, so she managed to break free of her restraints, and she grabbed the keys next door to the trailer that had been left there. And as she did this, she tried to dial 911, but when she tried to dial 911, Cindy Hendy, David's girlfriend, walked in on her, so she hung up, and Cindy grabbed a knife and actually stabbed Cynthia. And after that, a struggle ensued. It was really, really brutal. Cynthia managed to grab hold of an ice pick and stab Cynthia in the head. And once she did that, she broke free from Cindy and just ran out of the trailer. She ran out of the trailer. She was bleeding. She was naked. She had a shock collar around her neck. She was still in shackles. She was still in chains. And she pretty much just ran for her life. Down the road in the middle of the night, she came across a mobile home, and she talked to the family that was at the mobile home, and eventually the authorities were notified after that. Another one of his confirmed victims was Marie Parker. Already spoke about her a little bit. She was forced at knife point by Jessie to get into a race truck. She was taken to the toy box, and after days of torture, Jessie commanded her ex-boyfriend Roy, who had organized the assault, to kill Marie. He strangled her with a rope and dumped her into the ravine in Monticello Canyon. So that was also... David had ordered Roy to kill her, so that was also something that he was kind of charged with. And the last of his confirmed victims was Kelly Van Cleve. So she was drugged... Okay, so what happened was Kelly got into a fight with her husband. They were newlyweds when she got into a fight with her husband, and she was friends with Jessie. So when Kelly got into a fight, she just left the house angry and went to a bar. And she called up Cindy and was like, hey, can you come meet me at the bar? While they were at the bar talking about Kelly's issues with her husband, Jessie she spiked her drink. So she drugged Kelly, obviously took her against her will, to Ray's trailer. And after about 3 days of torture, Ray got scared that people were going to start looking for her. So what he did was he drugged her again, took her to her in-laws' house because they were nearby, and just told the in-laws that she had been drunkenly, like woozily, like wandering the beach, and that he had found her. And yeah, because of the drugs that she had, that Ray had given her, she couldn't remember exactly what happened to her. So she pretty much had 3 days missing from her life that she just couldn't remember. And for a while, she just believed it. She just her family got really upset about her because of the whole situation. And yeah, that was the third of the confirmed absolute 100% doubt victims that David had. So yeah, David was later arrested. So the first time that he had a run-in with law enforcement was when Jessie notified the authorities when she was 19, as previously discussed. The police, FBI couldn't charge him on anything because they didn't have any hardcore evidence at the time. So they let him go. And he wouldn't be arrested for 13 years later. So the FBI had David in their custody. But because they had no physical evidence and he admitted to it, they just let him go. And he would kidnap, rape, torture women for the next 13 years. And then his next arrest came after Cynthia Vigil. She was a girl that escaped. She managed to escape Cindy. So when she escaped Cindy, as I said, it was a small town. So when she dialed 911 and hung up immediately, the law enforcement of the area was like, hey, that's a bit peculiar because the town only had about 1,000 people. So that wouldn't go unnoticed. And then 20 minutes later, they got notified that a girl had been running down the street naked, screaming for her life. So they had these 2 calls in the span of like 30 minutes. So they were like, okay, these are probably connected. So they dispatched law enforcement to go to the house where the 911 call had been hung up. And they raided David's apartment trailer. They raided his trailer, and then that's where it pretty much began to unravel for David. They pretty much got him red-handed. We'll go into exactly the evidence that they had on him, but essentially David had filmed all of the torture sessions that he did. He filmed almost all of them. They raided his place. They were just hundreds of tapes of him committing these acts, and they pretty much had him. David initially said that it was all consensual, but obviously it wasn't. And he pretty much saw the writing on the wall, so he pleaded guilty to kidnapping and torture in exchange for Jesse's release. So his daughter's release, his accomplice release. So the police believed he was guilty for as much as 30 murders. However, no evidence was ever found. A lot of people think it was way more than that. Since he couldn't be convicted of any actual murders, the judge just gave him the maximum sentence that he could for kidnapping, which was 223 years. And on the first day of his sentence, the literal first day of his sentence, David dropped dead of a heart attack while in his holding cell. So he actually never saw any punishment for what he did. His accomplices here as well, besides David, Roy Yancey served 11 years for the murder of Marie. And today he is a free man. So he is still a free man today. He's walking amongst us. He did 11 years. Jessie Ray was in 2 years, but she was let go after David cut the deal. So she only served 2 years, Jessie. Cindy Hendy did 19 years, and she was later released after only serving half her time. So 3 of the 4 people involved in this whole, torture weird thing that they were doing, 3 of the 4 are still walking around today. And it was only 3 of the 4 because David died. So that's pretty much how it came to an end for David. So the book itself, Slow Death by James Fielder, takes a pretty pragmatic approach to telling the story of David Parker Ray. It isn't like a series of interviews, kind of like how In Cold Blood is. It's a pretty well-researched account of David's crimes. It's Yeah, it goes into depth on David's accomplices and his life itself. It talks a lot about the victims' lives and the trouble that they had afterwards as a result of their experiences. It also talks about what was actually inside of David's trailer, as well as the nuances of the trial and investigation as a whole. Personal connection. So, yeah, I mean, like, can you just imagine being one of the women in that scenario? Like, you're drugged and you wake up and you don't know where you are, and you see all of these like torture devices all around you. You're stripped naked, and then you hear the tape that David has played, that he had pre-recorded, and you just hear the tape that some guy's talking about exactly what he's going to do to you in explicit detail. It must have been really, it must have been terrible, honestly. One of the victims, Kelly Van Cleve, her life was completely altered by the experiences. Her body was left permanently scarred as a result of the abuse that she had. Her husband also left her because he thought that she was lying about being abducted for 3 days. So her marriage just fell apart afterwards. The woman also played a tape. Yeah, as I said. Yeah, experience must have been terrible. It must have been absolutely horrible. So academic response. I thought the book was pretty good. Book was as unbiased as I think it could have possibly been. James did a really good job with his research. The book was essentially it was like a timeline, so it was like a series of events. It went in order of the series of events of David Spree. It wasn't difficult to read at all. It's something that I think most people could probably read. Yeah, I just thought that the book was pretty good. It was pretty easy to follow as well. So final thoughts. Yeah, David Ray Parker sucks. He's probably one of the worst people I think I've ever heard. Simply because he was unremorseful for like if you watch the interviews, he just did not care at all. He would just freely tell you exactly what he did, in really blunt honesty. In his interviews, he straight up admits to exactly what he did up until his trial. As I said, he recorded his torture session, so the investigators. Yeah, so these torture sessions that he recorded. So when the investigators came to comb through the evidence during the raid, they had to watch the tapes to compile evidence. So they had to go through hundreds of these tapes of just David abusing these women. And when they were watching the tapes, these police officers had to periodically leave the room because it was so bad. Like they actually they just couldn't watch it. Police officers frequently threw up. They puked after watching them. There was one case where this girl, she was a sketch artist, and she was tasked with sketching all of the evidence and she was essentially tasked with going through all the evidence. So she had to watch all the tapes. She had to go through David's trailer, account for all of the devices that he had in there. She pretty much went through the entire case, and she did this for about 5 days. So 5 days she just combed through all the evidence, and then after 5 days, after she turned in her assignment, she actually did kill herself. And in the note, she attributed to working the David Parker rape case. She said it was one of the worst things that she had ever seen. So yeah, these tapes, the acts that he did, had a permanent scar on a lot of the people that actually investigated it, let alone just the victims. So yeah, that was my book talk. Yeah, that's about it.